Hello to everybody. Thanks a lot for joining to this stakeholder dialogue on the Conference of the Future of Europe. Just to put everything into context for those joining us only for this session, the meeting as such is a two-day meeting of actually a virtual visit of the former Members Association of former members of the European Parliament. These visits normally take place physically, and they have normally, there are several visits, but this is the classical presidency visit on the occasion of the German presidency of the Council of the European Union. Now, the topic chosen today is the Conference on the Future of Europe. You probably all know where we stand. The three institutions, the three main EU institutions, have all decided on their own position towards this Conference on the Future of Europe. What we still miss and lack is the joint statement of all the three institutions on what this Conference on the Future of Europe should address and what the format should be in order to address the questions preferred by the different institutions. So there is no agreement yet on the procedure and on the exact content and the format. In this respect, and in order to have an exchange of views with institutions here in Germany, which do follow very closely what the European institutions are planning in this area, we have invited today a few stakeholders who can give us an input and tell us what, let's say, what their position on this Conference on the Future of Europe is. That's the purpose of this meeting today. I thank you all, the stakeholders, the representatives of the different institutions, for their time they take for us to discuss this important topic with us, and obviously all the former members who joined us today and this morning. Thanks a lot, and like this I would basically hand over to the president of the former Members Association, Mr. Hans-Gerd Pöttering, who will few words, and then we go to the comments we receive from the different institutions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Georg Pfeiffer, for organizing our meeting this morning. And I want to welcome not only our colleagues, the former members of the European Parliament, but especially now our guests from the society. And I want to, exactly to them, I want to explain what we have done so far as the delegation of the former Members Association here in Berlin, only virtually. Unfortunately, we would like to be here in person. We had yesterday a very good discussion with the President of the German Bundestag, Wolfgang Schäuble. Then we had a meeting with the Vice President of the German Association of former members of the German Bundestag and the European Parliament, the German ones, with Mr. Jörg van Essen. Then we had a discussion with Axel Dittmann from the Foreign Office. He is very much engaged in the details of the German presidency. And then we had a meeting with the chairman of the Committee on European Union Affairs of the German Bundestag, Gunter Kriechbaum. So it was a very intensive day, and we are very happy today to meet with you as representatives of the society. I am personally very close to the European movement. I had the honor to be for 10 years chairman of the Europa Union from Lower Saxony, and for 2 years as president of the Europa Union Deutschland. So I would like to make just a few remarks concerning the conference on the future of Europe. Unfortunately, the coronavirus does not allow us to start our work already now, because everywhere is the coronavirus pandemia in the heads of the people, and everybody is engaged in this field. But I hope that we can perhaps still during the German presidency, that means by the end of this year, start this conference on the future of Europe. There are still, as Georg Pfeiffer has mentioned, open questions how it should be organized. I think we need a very open and broad discussion with civil society, and at the same time we need a body maybe comparable to the convention we had to under the chairmanship of President Giscard d'Estaing to prepare the European Constitution, which unfortunately finally failed, but we got the Lisbon Treaty, and the Lisbon Treaty is more or less the European Constitution. My advice is, and we have discussed this yesterday with President Gunter Kriechbaum, we should be open for treaty changes as well. And since if there is a treaty change, the national parliaments have to ratify the treaty or the changes of a treaty, I think it's very important to include the national parliaments as well. And so it should not only be a conference or convention of the European institutions, we should include the national parliaments and civil society as well. And I think we need a discussion about that. As far as the association of former members of the European Parliament is concerned, we are just now in the process to build a reflection group. I have already organized, or our board has already organized or got an agreement for 6 people of such a reflection group, and they are all former members of the European Parliament. And we still need some more, so it needs to be politically, it needs to be balanced between north and south, west and east. And so we are still in the process building this reflection group of 9 or 10 or 11 people. So we want to accompany with our reflection group the work of the conference on the future of Europe. And so you see that we, as former members of the European Parliament, are still engaged. And many of us are still active in organizations as professors or in institutions. So former member does not mean that we are in pension totally. Some are, but the greater part is not. So the greater part is still very active. So let us have a very open process. Everything can be put on the table. And when I speak about treaty changes, I mean, for instance, the question of health. We see now with the coronavirus problem that the European Union has not too many competences, and not everything should be brought to the European level. We need a good cooperation between the local level, the regional level, the national level, and the European level. And I think the treaty should give the European Union the possibilities to be active in this field. So this is a short introduction from my side, and I understand that the first speaker now will be Marco Svennevald from the European Movement Germany, and he is the advisor on European policy, and his subject is expectations of European Movement Germany on the conference on the future of Europe. So please, Marco Svennevald, we are now very interested to hear what your message is.
Thank you very much, and thanks also for giving us the opportunity to discuss also with you our expectation on the conference on the future of Europe. And so I represent the European Movement Germany with 259 member organizations. We are the largest network of social forces in the field of European politics in Germany. And I'm substituting also today our president, Lynn Selle, and our secretary general. Bernd Hüttemann, who are unfortunately not able or available to join this meeting today because it's also the week of our General Assembly. So supporting the idea and shaping the conference so that it becomes a meaningful and EU-wide and inclusive dialogue is one of our main priorities. And we have facilitated the process from, you could say, the very beginning. We have facilitated dialogue with MEPs and also members of the German Bundestag. We have organized also debates also with BBE, here present also with Dr. Heuberger. And we have worked also on different infographics to show also to our members and to the public also what is our expectation to the conference on the future of Europe. And so briefly, our expectation is really that the conference should become what we have seen already in parts in the run-up of the European elections. That means it should become a contest of ideas on the future of Europe visible to all European citizens. And so how can we achieve this vision, and how can we ensure that the dialogue initiates these changes needed to make Europe crisis-proof, you could say future-proof, and also more democratic? In our views, 4 elements are essential. First of all, of course, we need to involve citizens, and we need to involve them in a meaningful way. And that's why we very much supported also the idea of the European Parliament to have citizens agora that work on recommendations then for the plenary. But for us, and there I think we are also on the same side of the European Parliament, these citizens should be selected representatively. They should represent all strands of society. And secondly, and that's also important for us, the decisions about the recommendations, they should be elaborated by the convention partners. Because the treaty in Article 48 TEU assigns them the role to work or to elaborate treaty changes. And if in the end we would like to see really the change, if we would like to see treaty changes, then these institutions, meaning the European Parliament, the European Commission, the representatives of the national governments and the national parliaments, they should be in the driving seats. They should sit in the plenary and decide about the recommendations. And third, of course, we should have a transparent and open process. So citizens should see in the end why some of their contributions have been taken into account and why some of their contributions have been rejected in the end. They should have access to all documents, and the plenary meetings and almost all the meetings should be streamed online. And finally, and that's maybe one of the most important parts for us, we need the joint commitment of all the 3 EU institutions to implement finally the recommendation, even if this leads to treaty changes in the end. And there, of course, we are also very much in favor of what the European Parliament has proposed, but we are more critical what the Council has proposed. Just says, okay, we should take it into account and then put it on the agenda for the European Council in 2022. So in the end, you could say we are very pleased to see that the European Parliament has taken up many of our recommendations that we have elaborated already at the end of last year. And we hope that the EU institutions will agree on the joint declaration as soon as possible. Information that we have got, it's very likely that it will now happen in the upcoming weeks. There's only the question about the chairmanship still on the agenda. But there's one risk, and Mr. Pöttering, you mentioned it already. Of course, COVID-19 makes physical European meetings, and especially meetings of citizens, impossible. But we should not waste now the process to have just a digital better citizens dialogue. So of course we should maybe start as soon as possible, but then we should take our time and not have only a 2-year process, or maybe extend the process to 3 years, so that in the end we have a real and meaningful debate on the future of Europe, including physical meetings of citizens that we need. So these are, in brief words, our recommendations. This is our view on the conference on the future of Europe, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fennewald.
You are doing. You want to take the floor, Georg Pfeiffer?
It's fine. If you take over, fine.
No, because here's moderation, but you can do it as well, please.
I didn't want to take over, but fine. No, thanks a lot, Mr. Wennewald. I would just basically hand over to the next stakeholder, Ms. Clara Völler from the Young European Federalists Germany. She's the president, and she will also present to us their views and their expectations for this conference. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So first question, do you hear me? Does everybody hear me? Perfect, thank you. Perfect, thank you. Well, first of all, also a warmly thank you from our side for inviting us and for having the chance to discuss our points on the Conference on the Future of Europe. To shortly introduce myself, my name is Clara Völler, president of the JEF Germany, which is a non-partisan youth organization striving for more European democracy and in the end for a federal Europe since over 70 years. I was asked to provide some short statement on what young people expect from the Conference on the Future of Europe. And I think it's firstly important to remember that young people pretty much care about the future of Europe. So our generation is maybe the first generation who grew up in an entirely European reality. The only border that we knew was when traveling through Europe was the one to Switzerland. The first pocket money we received was in euro. Spending some time abroad in another European country, for example, through an Erasmus semester, is to many students super normal. So to make it short, we always took Europe and all the nice advantages of the European Union for granted. Yet, with each new crisis, it became also to us more and more evident that the European Union is not perfect. So looking at just some current and very, very important issues, such as climate change, for example, such as the rule of law in Hungary and Poland, such as human rights at the EU's external borders, the current image the European Union is dealing with these problems is just simply not a good one. So in fact, it seems that the European Union is either, well, to say like this, it's either unwilling or unable to live up to its role. And that's a problem. So if you want that young people remain committed to the European idea, then we really need to make sure that we improve and strengthen the European Union. So luckily, young people have some pretty clear ideas and actually also a vision on how the future of Europe, but also of the European society as a whole, could and eventually also should look like. When it comes to the Conference on the Future of Europe, it is firstly important to engage in particularly young people in a way that offers them the opportunity to have a real say. It is, to our opinion, absolutely necessary that European citizens have the feeling that their ideas may have a real impact. Crucial that the Conference on the Future of Europe is not just another listening training, but that it takes the idea of its citizens and translate them into political action. Therefore, that is something we as federalists are working towards since quite some time. We need more European democracy. We need a stronger parliament, a unified electoral system. We need more cross-border cooperation in health politics, for example, to combat a global pandemic. We need a strong and stable rule of law. We need commitment on the European values. Well, and finally, the conference opens up the chance to really improve and strengthen the European Union. So we need to talk about institutional changes. We need a debate on where to go. In particular, in times of crisis, we need a clear vision that provides orientation for further steps. And therefore, the conference must allow for real changes, be it through 3D changes or through a new convention. So when it comes to the expectations we have for the conference on the future of Europe, then it's essentially this: to provide a clear vision for the future of Europe that has been jointly developed by European institutions and European citizens. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Völler. And we continue the series of comments with Mr. Frank Heuberger. He's from the National Network for Civil Society, Network Political Representative for European Affairs, and he will also present to us the expectations they got for this conference. Mr. Heuberger?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Can you see me? Do you see me and hear me? Hello, hello.
We hear you, but we can't see you. At least I can't see you, but the sound is all right.
What shall I do? Because
now it's better. Now it's better.
I see myself on the little right-hand corner, but I'm not sure if you see me. But
we now can see you. Yeah,
you see me. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much for inviting me. You just mentioned the National Network of Civil Society. Just 2 sentences. It's a nationwide organization of institutions and organizations supporting volunteers and active citizens in Germany. We have over 300 membership organizations from all societal sectors, from the voluntary, from the private and public sector. We were founded in 2002. Following the recommendation of a German parliamentary committee of inquiry, the future of civic engagement. So this is my background, and we are collaborator with a number of European organizations on the Brussels level, and so I try to speak on behalf of them, so at least I was asked to do so. You just mentioned at the very beginning that unfortunately the joint declaration is not finished yet, but I think it is really necessary that it will be, or it has to be finished pretty soon, because there are 3 major stumbling blocks when you compare the papers and the opinions from the Parliament, from the Commission, and from the European Rat, namely the question of the leadership. It really makes a big difference if it's a Parliament leadership or if it is a European personality, and the question of the treaty change. Is it possible or is it upfront impossible? And of course, the follow-up and the implementation of the results. I think these 3 things are really crucial, and the joint declaration has to come up with a compromise here. What the follow-up and the implementation of the results is concerned, I think we would really look for, at least the citizens and the organized civil society is really looking for a comprehensive action plan, because if it is just up to the head of states to define the next steps, or even just, let's say, a written report, then I think it would not be worth to have a 2-year marathon of conferences. What is clear, and it is out there in several papers, opinions, and remarks, that we need a clear concept, a clear structure, a clear timing, scope, that it is transparent. We have that it is online and offline, and of course it should be representative. But what I also think is very important, that it is a mixture, top-down and a bottom-up approach. Not only a bottom-up approach, but also a top-down approach. Why also a top-down approach? Because we believe that the monitoring of the conference is important, and also a comparable reporting. If you, for example, look at countries like Hungary and Poland, where we have at the moment a questioning of the rule of law, and if you are a bit familiar with the civil society situation in these countries, then we all speak now of the shrinking space for the civil society in these countries, then you get an idea how important would be that there is also a participation by the citizens and by the organized civil society without the fear of being arrested. So I think a monitoring and the comparability in the reporting is also crucial for the success of this conference marathon. But how can we guarantee that those countries which are really have trouble respecting all the democratic rules, that we can also ask their uncomfortable questions? This is really important, and therefore we need a clear difference between the leadership of the conference and the political and institutionally independent steering group. I think these two groups has to be clearly independent, and we really have to work on it. And finally, what's even more important for the citizens and the organized civil society is the following. If the conference is to make a real contribution to the democratization of the EU, it must seize the opportunity to create a permanent mechanism to give citizens and also the youth, like Mrs. Clara Föller just said, give citizens and civil society greater say in the EU decisions. For years, the civil society is really fighting very hard on the country and also on the EU level on the implementation of Article 11 of the Lisbon Treaty. You're probably familiar with this article because it already gives us the opportunity of an open, of a transparent and a permanent dialogue with the institutions of the EU. But unfortunately, this Article 11 is not implemented as well as it should be. So I think there would be a good chance for this conference to really make use of this Article 11 to implement it in the entire conference process. So if you, the members, the former members of the parliaments, have a chance and have a say on the outcome of this joint declaration, then of course it would be wonderful if you speak really on behalf of the European citizens and the civil society organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heuberger. Mr. President, do you want to react to these comments immediately, or shall we ask for further comments from the different? There are also other organizations and institutions and interest groups represented here today.
It's what you like, Mr. Pfeiffer. You organize this, so you are free.
Is there anybody else from the other organizations who want to take the floor immediately? As far as I can see, no. So, Mr. President, want to comment on what?
Thank you very much. I think there is now a technical problem, but it seems to be all right. I could not see Frank Heuberger when he spoke. I am asking the director of the Former Members Association, Elisabetta, what can we do that we see the speakers?
Mr. President, this is not always possible. It depends on their connection and on your connection. So if the connection is not too strong, then perhaps some of the members can see the photo, the face of the speaker, but not all of you. So we cannot do anything about that.
Okay, so because I would have liked to see Mr. Heuberger, we could see Clara Föller, we could see Markus Pellerat, and of course Director Pfeiffer, but not Frank Heuberger.
I'm very sorry. I'm really sorry about it. My computer is absolutely perfect, and it's new, and I see myself, so I have no idea why my image is not visible. I have absolutely no idea. Maybe there's maybe somebody.
It's even more important to listen to the substance, what your ideas are. But it would have been even more perfect if we could have seen you as well. So before I give the floor to former members, and I have already three asking for the floor, I ask all speakers, all the three, when you all spoke, you have not to give an answer immediately now, but in connection with the other former members, if I may ask you. Everybody spoke about more democracy in the European Union. But I think we need a very concrete answer. What you mean by that? Where should be more democracy? And the question always is, people say, oh, the European Parliament should have more power. the European Parliament has a lot of power, and if it should get more power, then we have to say where it should get more power. So I ask you to think about that, and I may ask you to give an answer later. So I'm now giving the floor to former members, and I suggest that we always take 3 making their comments or asking questions, and then you answer. So we have 3 now on our list. It's Brigitte Langenhagen, it's Sebastian Dance, and it's Margarita Starke-Witziute. Brigitte Langenhagen from Germany first. Please, Brigitte.
Mr. President, may I just add, there are 2-3 organizations who would want to take the floor.
Okay, good.
Take them now immediately or after this first round?
Whatever you like.
Well, then, if they make a short comment, let's take them now first before we go into the discussion. There is Christian Johann from the European Academy Berlin, who, by the way, also plans plans a Berlin initiative on this conference of the future of Europe. Mr. Johann, you have the floor for a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pfeiffer. And thank you very much for having me. Can you all hear me? Just give me a sign, Mr. Pfeiffer, if you... Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. As you said, I'm director of the European Academy here in Berlin, and we have been, since 1963, a facilitator for back channeling, actually, comments on the European Union to Brussels, and on the other hand, to bring Brussels to your neighborhood, so to speak, and to bring really all that is decided in Strasbourg and Brussels to everybody here in Berlin. And what we try to initiate together with Gabi Bischoff and Hildegard Bentele, 2 members of the European Parliament here from Berlin, is kind of a very pragmatic approach to talking about what is this conference all about. So our interest right now is to, first of all, to channel all the high interest we found here in Berlin regarding the conference on the future of the European Union, which is seen by all the people that try to take part with our initiative. We have the Senate departments for Europe here in Berlin, the Senate Department for Education, the liaison offices of the European Commission and the Parliament, members of the Berlin Parliament who also say that we have a situation in which we would like to take part and have a say, actually, in the development of the European Union, because we are not that happy with developments as seen in the current pandemic situation. That said, what do we plan? We really just would like very much to be a provider and a facilitator, actually, for all that you have commented already, and we would like to be the place, and we would like what we right now think what we would like to develop in the next couple of months, and then maybe the next 2 years, is something like a seal, like a Berlin seal for all the programs and all the conferences taking part in Berlin or happening in Berlin, to then, after 2 years, come to the Commission and tell them and show them this is all that we could gather in Berlin. These are the comments, these are the discussions. This is in the process of back channeling that what we saw bottom up as being discussed in Brussels and all the other member states of the European Union. So this Berlin initiative really is only starting next week on the 3rd of November. So don't ask me for early results. We're just in the process of really gathering all the members that will take part. But I can give you one highlight, and it's a very personal highlight for me too. I got my first email from the German Chancellery, who, I don't know, found out that we will initiate this Berlin initiative and asked us to provide them with a protocol. So it's a first hint at that there's a very high interest everywhere in Germany regarding the conference on the future of the European Union. And I think what we can offer and what we can be is to be a facilitator here in Berlin and take part in all the bottom-up plannings and conferences that we see in the next 2 years. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mr. Johann, for reporting to us on this important initiative. I still have two proposals. Mr. Marius Schlageter from the German Federal Youth Council would want to say something.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on which time zone you're at. My name is Marius Schlageter. I'm Vice President of the German Federal Youth Council, and we represent 53 youth organizations and regional youth councils in Germany with a total of around 6 million young people, and therefore see ourselves a bit as the voice of young people towards politics. Thank you also for the opportunity today. I think it's really important to discuss the conference on the future of Europe because for young people, it's a very important topic. And maybe just to add a bit a perspective of why we need a conference on the future of Europe, so that we don't only talk technicalities around it. Young people, as Clara said, and I couldn't agree anymore, are very much in favor of the European Union. They support it. They're Europeans by default. But the other side is that young people are also suffering from a youth crisis for more than 10 years, right? So the corona crisis has worsened the situation now, but youth unemployment, youth poverty, issues around mental health are always more increasing, and that is the fact for 10 years. We've seen that some people are saying we should prevent a lost generation now. I know that in Portugal, for example, they're talking of the Geração Arrasca, the lost generation for more than 12 years already. So what we need is a European Union that is actually capable of solving the problems that young people are confronted with, also to add climate change, to add all the social issues, to add the questions around digitalization and so on. And right now, we do not see the European Union in shape to solve those problems properly anymore and on time and effectively. So we need to reconfigure a bit the European Union itself, and this is why we need the conference on the future of Europe. Our demands are very much in line with what has been said already. We need to have an open conference on the future of Europe, saying that the process must be open. There should be the possibility to treaty changes. We need a binding process. So whatever might be the outcome of the European of the conference should not only be included in a report and then be read by the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission, but should have really policy and also politics impact in that case. And we need, and that's something that has not been mentioned so far, and I'm a bit concerned also, is structural involvement of the civil society also, because we tend to have this always more focus on citizens being included in the conference on the future of Europe. But let's not forget that civil society is nothing else but citizens organizing themselves among their common lines of interest. And so far, we are a bit worried to see that the role of the civil society in the conference hasn't been very clear and also not very strong. So that's probably the one point I'd mention or to emphasize the most. My very last point would be to emphasize we shouldn't take the support. We shouldn't Okay, so we shouldn't take the support of young people for granted. As I said, young people are suffering for a long time already, and we see that first studies suggest that the support of young people is starting to decrease a little bit, and that comes with the unsolved problems. And that goes for the conference as well. I believe if we want to take this conference and make this conference, it should be done in a well way. Otherwise, we risk also that not only young people, but European citizens in total or in general will turn their back towards the project, and that might be a big problem in the end. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Schlageter. We also would have a short comment from Julian Rappold from the German Council on Foreign Relations. Mr. Rappold.
Yes, hello. Also from my side, thank you for the invitation. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm working at the German Council on Foreign Relations. It's a big think tank here in Germany, and we have also followed the conference on the future of Europe quite extensively from the beginning. Just a few remarks. We ask about the expectations. I think indeed in Germany, particularly civil society has high expectations when it comes to the conference on the conference on the future of Europe. Yet probably I'm the first one here to be very frank and say these expectations have been lowered quite significantly over the process of how the situation is evolving, right? So there were a lot of excitement in the beginning. Also, we have followed it with a lot of excitement, yet how the process of coming to an agreement is materializing is pretty much sobering, and that is also leading to the expectations of what is the outcome of the conference. In fact, it is quite little, or there are fears actually that this will end up not in a meaningful process. Still, there will be an interinstitutional agreement, and I think this is also important. It is likely to be very broad, I think, what will come up, and this is why it is especially important who will actually take the lead and who will be the eminent person to chair, because this is a person that with his or her leadership can steer through the process and can give specific impulses. So I can subscribe to the notion who will be the person will actually also contribute, or will actually will have a big impact on how significant the conference on the future of Europe will be. And on top, what I also want to say is we will have the conference on the future of Europe anyway, so we will have to do the best out of it. And for me, we've heard a lot about the participation side of it. I want to add some comments on the content. First, institutional reform, the debate about Spitzenkandidaten, transnational lists. Here for me, the question is, should we actually add that to the process, or should we actually take it out rather? Given the timeline that we have, probably if we really want to have success on reaching an agreement here, I would tend to say that we rather take it out of the whole process. And a second aspect is indeed, when it comes to the conference on the future of Europe, is to me, it is a great tool actually also to keep a reform debate alive in another format. When looking at the political calendar of what is happening in the next 1 or 2 years, when we have the German federal elections, the French elections, presidential elections, maybe this will also not really the time in which we can steer forward with an actual, quite pressing and needed reform debate. We have to be honest about that. So maybe this is a format in which we can discuss pressing issues that are still on the table, in which we have policy issues, in which there is a deadlock, in which we can keep this debate alive. On the aspect of participation, for me, what is important is we have to move beyond certainly the Brussels bubble. I think this is indeed key. Link the transnational level, transnational debates that are also on the table with the national debates that are anticipated. Second point is learn from previous experiences, right? I mean, it's not the first dialogue format that we had. We had in run-up to the European Parliament elections and citizens consultations. And there is a lot of knowledge out there. There are a lot of people that have been working on these issues for a long time. That's why I can really subscribe of what Mr. Heuberger said. Make also a permanent mechanism out of this conference on the future of Europe. That's just my few remarks, and happy to discuss further.
Thank you, Mr. Rapport. And before we go into this discussion, there is a last comment by Susanne Wixforth, pardon. And then we will move on to the discussion, and I will hand over the moderation to the president again. Ms. Wixforth.
Yeah, good morning. I'm sorry I can't put on my video. I don't know why it doesn't work. I'm head of section of the German Confederation of Trade, of the European Policies Department of the German Confederation of Trade Unions. I just have very short remarks. We think our value added could be the organization within the company. So we have workers as members, and we want to organize them or to get some feedback directly from them, because as in the European election process, this was quite successful, and we succeeded in raising awareness, and that would be important also for this process. I would like to join a little bit the pessimism of the precedent speaker, because it was a very interesting start. So the idea to have a conference on the future of Europe, but then it seems to be quite difficult to make it happen. So now the motivation is a little bit decreasing, and our task will be to bring again motion in this process. We plan to organize directly in all companies where we are represented some questions. So we try to break down the European Union to, so to say, to company level, which is not very easy. However, I think the awareness is there because of COVID crisis and because of the big economic problems and challenges coming to a company level. Therefore, I think we will be able to raise awareness and to bring questions to them which they are also interested to answer. Because most of the workers will first ask, yeah, what has the European Union to do with us? We have big economic challenges, and we have come under pressure. What is this? What is the interest for us? So this will be our task. We see this our task to break this European Union down to, so to say, to everyday's level. We will start to organize workshops via our works councils and also workers' meetings, and try to bring the ideas together. I think this is the biggest challenge, how to make it a bottom-up process, and how to shape the many ideas into a channel via the European Union. We heard about the European Commission's project to have a platform working with artificial intelligence, and so we intend to use this platform also. And I think the most important thing will be to avoid the impression that it is just a tick-off exercise. And I think one of these elements will be not to say we have just 1.5 years until the French presidency, but to have it open. So the task should be to have good propositions and proposals, and not to just comply with a time limit which is set by politicians. Yeah, so I think this is my first contribution to the starting process. So we all are looking for what to have it done, so that the German presidency will be able to start this process. I think this is very important also for the motivation of participation of workers and also civil society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. And thank you to all of you for these important contributions. We now have 40 minutes for the debate, and I will hand over the moderation to our president, Mr. Pöttering.
Thank you very much, Director. And now we come to some former members. I have already 5 asking for the floor, and my proposal would be that we let's speak 3 former members of the European Parliament, and then you give answers. Would that be okay for your side? And I would like Georg Pfeiffer to give then the floor to those from your side who want to give answers. So the first one is Brigitte Langenhagen, then Sebastian Dens, and then Margarita Starke-Viciute. Brigitte Langenhagen.
Thank you all for this very interesting introduction. I'm very grateful, and I think all of us, and we will report on this morning especially. We are the former members association, as Dr. Hans-Gert Pöttering had already mentioned. He is our so-called boss. And we, the former members, have previous experience and big knowledge. And we want to share this with others, but also this might be of interest with the active members of the European Parliament. So we keep on being busy regarding the European vision. And the European vision is based on democracy. And so in the FMA, we have a working group on democracy building. It's not just established now, it's working now for quite a long time. And I can only say it's an ongoing process. We always have to refresh it, and we must be careful not to be isolated by referring always to the same warning. We want to get fresh ideas in this democracy building group, and so will take over all your ideas as well when we have checked them after this meeting. We, the FMA, also concentrate very much on the Erasmus program, and we very much concentrate on the EU campus program. So the academians amongst you, they will know this probably. If not, please ask our secretary and you will get all the advices, because we think one of the best things is to start education now. I won't say it's too late. No, we just start because the next generation needs answers, and we are already trying to get via a dialogue, a permanent dialogue, good answers. And this is based on a very good and positive exchange. I liked your introduction because you were not claiming or saying only things which are wrong, but you have been mentioning very clearly your ideas and give a good analysis of what is going wrong and what you want to be improved. But please stop the analysis when there is a moment that one should do it, and just concentrate, because time is running on the answers. This means the solutions. This is what we will do in the Former Members Association as well. And just like you, we have started to create a round table with Brussels networks, networks that are situated in Brussels, very similar to yours, but it was the first round table in only a few weeks ago, and we will have the second round table with the same members in December. And moreover, we, the FMA, also organized an transnational network. For the first time ever, we had a meeting on the future of Europe, not only, of course, but starting with the COVID-19 situation, to think about the strength of not only the European Union, not only of Europe, but also of the world in crisis situations like this. And in this first ever a network, we met Americans and we met Canadians, and this will be increased in the future also. So I wanted to tell you this, as I'm a vice president of the Former Members Association of the Member States of the Council of Europe. This was more or less the last remark I made. And I'm a board member of the Former Members Association, so that you know whom you can speak to, and we would love to be also in the future your partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigitte Langenhagen. And now Sepp Dance, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you everybody who's spoken. I think there is a huge synergy in what's being said, and that's very encouraging. It clearly shows a direction of travel in terms of how people are thinking about the future of the EU. I mean, I'm privileged to remain a European citizen, and thank goodness for me that is a huge relief. But obviously, I represented a constituency from a country that very narrowly rejected the European Union. And although things might have changed since then, we all know the history of this story and where it's led to. And I think one of the huge factors that people feel across developed democracies is a distinct lack of control over their lives. Technology is changing the way that we work, the way that we interact with each other. And although that has huge benefits, of course it does, it leads to a sense, I think, that many people feel alienated from the processes that decide the world around them. And I think that the European Union has an enormous opportunity here in addressing that question of how it can strengthen the relationship between citizen and institutions. And there's been lots of ideas today, but one thing I'd be really interested in developing is how can we strengthen the role of the regions and the cities in the decision-making process? Because when I was a member of the European Parliament working on environmental files, more often than not, I would find the member states would oppose some pretty ambitious and very innovative policies on the environment, whereas the cities in the nation states that were opposing the measures, the cities and the regions would often support even stronger measures. And there's far more synergy between Berlin and Bratislava and Dublin and Dusseldorf and Oslo and you know, even places outside the Union that can be involved in that decision making. And I wondered what ideas people had. Is it strengthening the existing institutions, the Committee of the Regions, for example? Is there a role to be played there, or are there other ideas? And do we think that with the member states as currently configured, do we think that that treaty change is possible to deliver that stronger connection at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth. And when you speak about the regions, the committee, it's a committee of the regions and the local authorities, the local level as well. And very often this is forgotten. And I think we have to get this together, the regions and the local level. And that's exactly in the name of the, what is it, Committee of the Regions? What is the English? Ausschuss der Region. In German it would be Ausschuss der Region, Committee of the Regions and local level. So it belongs together. Okay, thank you so much. And now from Lithuania, Margarita Stakiviciūtė.
Can you hear me? Okay. My point is very simple. From time, institutions hinder growth and development. It's clearly seen from your presentations or remarks that you are disappointed by how this conference is organized. But you do not have to wait. Just start your conference, elect your leader, and go ahead, because Germany is president of the European Union for this half of the year. And do not wait for anybody, because if you look back, you will see that it already happened in Europe, that students, young people, civil society organizations just decided that they want to have changes now. So make it.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I would like to ask Georg Pfeiffer again if there are answers from his side, from the organizations.
I can hand over this question to the representatives from the organizations. Is there anybody who wants to take the floor and react to what has been said so far?
If you want, I can react to the first question by Mr. Popping.
Please.
I mean, because you were asking, okay, which democratic reforms do we would like to see? For us, of course, there may be 3 channels that we should improve. I mean, first of all, and that was already mentioned by you, Mr. Pöttering, that we should expand the community method. We should increase on the role, the power of the European Parliament. And of course, there are many policy fields where already the European Parliament is on equal footing with the Council. But if I think about external affairs to some extent, but also on tax policies, maybe there's some room for improvement. One might think also about the decision on the multi-annual financial framework on the long run. But then second, of course, and that was also already mentioned, of course, we have to think about a unilateral electoral system. We have to think about the reforms of the lead candidate system, and there's also maybe some responsibility for the families of the European parties and of the transnational list. And last but not least, and that's also very much important, we should strengthen also the accountability and the legitimacy also through the council. We should strengthen also the link with citizens through the council. And there we often say, of course, the European Parliament and the Commission, they act already quite transparent, but the council doesn't act that transparent. And especially if I think about national European politics and there about German European politics, it tends to be sometimes a black hole. Not many people know how Germany comes to its position that it promotes then in the Council of the EU. And there, of course, we should also improve a little bit the role of social forces, of civil society, their involvement, and we should improve also the role of the parliament. So why is it not the case in Germany, for instance, and in many other member states that the minister has to go to the Bundestag and present his position that he wants to take in the Council of the EU to the competent committee in the Bundestag? And that might play maybe also a role in this conference. And of course, in general, because many people were saying now with the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, oh no, we don't have time for such a conference, it's impossible. But we say, okay, now such a conference is much more important than ever, because it can discuss three things. Of course, the democratic reforms, but we have to think also or reflect also what has happened in March with all the failure to act and show solidarity among member states. And there we not only need a recovery fund, we need also this broad dialogue in the long run. And then, of course, with all the changes that are happening, with the digital transition, with the ecological transition, we have to think also about our priorities at the European level. And there, of course, also we need this conference, and that's why it's so important.
Thank you. There is another reaction before we move to the next round of members. Mr. Schlageter.
I was also going to say something.
Thank you very much. Okay, just very quick. I'd like to add up on Markus. When it comes to the European election system, let's also remember that it's really hard to explain people why we have 27 different election systems when voting for the very same parliament. And from a young perspective, I think what is really important to talk voting ages then, usually we'd like to talk active voting age, which should be 16 or 14 from our perspective. But when talking passive voting age, we've got a very different situation also, where we see Greece and Italy having a passive voting age of 25, which makes it impossible for young people to be represented in the European Parliament. And that's also a very crucial point when talking democratization of the European Union. I'd like to agree 100% with Markus when it comes to the role of the council. We see that the council is a very important actor and also very legitimate actor. Let's not forget that. But it's also the one single actor that has the tendency to fall back on national egoisms and kind of block European solutions that are very much needed in times where all our problems are always more global. And one third point is when it comes to the legitimacy also of the Commission, I think we really need the Spitzenkandidaten system, or we believe it as Youth Council, because it's really hard to explain citizens that we're talking to candidates at an election that, by the way, most of the people all over Europe couldn't even vote for because they have to vote in national lists. So transnational voting lists is also an important topic. But then in the end, suddenly a third person that nobody anywhere actually knew beforehand becomes president of the European Commission. That is really hard to explain to people. Actually, it's impossible to explain it to them. And you can find democratic arguments why that's okay, but I believe when it comes to legitimacy, that's a major issue.
Thank you. I think there is food for discussion here. Mr. President, who are the next speakers?
Okay, thank you so much. Now the next one is Anna Karamanou from Greece, and then Evelyn Lichtenberger from Austria, and then Sofia Maciej-Kukovic from Slovenia. Anna, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, it is a very interesting discussion. I was very glad to listen, especially to the young people, having a vision on the future of Europe. Clara first referred to a unified political system, and also some other participants talked on this, and I'm very glad that they are thinking of a unified electoral system in Europe. I would like to ask, could you also vision a unified taxation system, or more importantly, a unified foreign and defense policy? Or even more important, can you vision a European federal system, or a unified educational system? And what is the role? Can we see the role of Europe globally? Now Europe is between China and the US, and can we vision a more important role and a more strengthened role of Europe in global affairs? We took some lessons from the pandemic, and how we have to react on global challenges and on global. Do the young people, think on this, also in these issues, on the EU leadership on the world? And the very last question, what the young people think on the rise of the far right in Europe, and even Nazi parties. We had a Nazi party in Greece, which we have managed to eliminate. But there are other countries, European countries, who cannot cope with this rise of the far right and the identity policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna Karamanou. And now Evelyn Lichtenberger, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think if we discuss about the conference for the future of Europe, we should also consider the experiences made in the convention. Since I've been participating, I noted some elements with which we really should think about very clearly. The first one is we had events of participation of civil society in the range of this convention. But what I found out was that people afterwards had felt kind of uneasy because they didn't get any feedback. They did not know if and how their interventions were taken aboard or not, which means that for a future conference or for a future involvement of civil society, we also have to install kind of feedback loop to respond to what they have presented to us. I think this would be a very important thing. And my experience in the last years, having a lot of contact with young people, was also that, of course, there's a big interest in the European Union, but is it all on structural questions of how the collaboration between Parliament and Council works, about the role of the Council, and so on and so on? I think this is one big basket we have to deal with. But the other big basket is, of course, topics. Should we, as has already been mentioned, should we talk about new or the better competences in foreign policy? Should there be a change in the competences? All of this has to be summarized in somewhat two kind of discussions, one on topics and one on structural issues. Of course, this corresponds, and of course, this belongs together, but lots of young people which I had discussions with felt uneasy just to discuss about structures that are not really familiar to them. So I think this is a very important point, to take up the experiences that we have made in the first convention, and there is no way around including civil society. There's no way around, and this is why I just wanted to propose right now. Now, in these times where we have a half or soft lockdown in several member states, people are staying at home. And a lot of people are using all those online meetings. Why not start with an offensive, giving a series of online meetings in different formats to people, just to come in with their ideas on the future of Europe? I think this would be very important. And the last sentence, I sometimes feel a slight difference between the interests of big cities and the interests of regions. So in the Committee of the Regions, I had the feeling in the last years there was more dominant the regional aspect than the aspect of cities.
Thank you so much. Do you have a bird in your living room?
Yes, sorry. I have a parrot in my living room.
Yes,
and
so
I can't
welcome. You are living in a paradise, so it's very nice.
I can't silence him. He always, when I'm online, he always is singing. So
yeah, that's good. So you have a good communicator. Okay, and now Sofia Kukovic. Sofia.
And thank you to all of you for your very fruitful representation, especially the youth organization. I wondered how many youth organizations which are in favor in European Union are very active in Germany. And you, the young one, you are actually the glue of European Union. And just go on. Yeah, now it's the time that you are using all of the good idea, and one of them for our and for your perspective is especially entrepreneurial spirit. We do not have in European Union enough such a spirit, and especially during the unemployment times, when a lot of young people do not have the opportunity to getting a job anywhere. This spirit is maybe the solution, and it needs to be very carefully discussed. When you are talking about youth poverty, it's very difficult word for me when I hear something like that. Maybe you were born in a nice during the nice time, as you said. Since we are using the euro and everything was fine, but today we are living in the time when the virus going or fighting against us. I'm the member of ECDC management board representing European Parliament. And this virus, it's really something which we didn't expect, and we didn't prepare for this. But in one hand, we were prepared with the technology, because today, when we have this artificial intelligence and digital technologies, so we could communicate, we could discuss, and we could work despite such a very difficult situation. But when you are talking about the poverty and unemployment, you need just to compare this time maybe with 40 years ago or 50 years ago, asking your parents or grandparents, did they have such an opportunity for traveling? Did they have such an opportunity with the access to the to knowledge, to the education? Did they have selbstverständlich food everywhere? Probably you will get very different the answers, and that's why I would like to ask you that that you are first of all comparing the situation with this one in the past, which was not so good, and with all this experience, we could go, you could go in the future, as I said, with your talents, with this infrastructure which we have today, and with more entrepreneurial spirits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sofia Kukovic. I would like to make the following proposal. We still have 10 minutes and only one former member asking for the floor. I would like to take this member now. It's Manuel Porto. And then we get the answers or comments from our friends, from the young friends. And then we come to a conclusion. Would that be okay? So Manuel Porto, please, you are the last on our side.
And many thanks. You are hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So congratulations for the 17 sessions yesterday and today. But today I shall so address my question or perhaps suggestion to the people who have spoken, but it is connected with the indication yesterday that people are losing confidence in the European movement. It is something I do not understand, because in fact, if you see to the figures, so there are two things we should take into account. The first one,
Manuel, we cannot hear you.
It's okay? You are hearing me?
Yeah, now
it's
we
okay?
hear you. Yes.
You are hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So there are two questions. One is the following. Well, somebody has already mentioned, you are still a big economy, but I mean, we have no confidence in Europe. The other countries have, the people of other countries. In the coming week on Wednesday, I shall be lecturing in India, indicated by the Former Members Association. It is an honor. And of course, they are interested in Europe. If you see to foreign investment, Europe is the most attractive part of the world with foreign investment. Okay, so we do not so believe in European movement or so union, but the others from China, Japan, and so on and so on, they do believe. So I think you should have, and all these organizations and ourselves, the former members, should give better information about Europe. And the other case, which I always stress, also sometimes in Macau, is the following. Europe is best example in which two democracies, with the political democracy, the European social model, something I always stress, we can compete. So in this case, so it is something, what can be done? So this question. The second point is what should be done? Well, changing the treaty is not so you can change, but not so much, but using the treaty. And I ask whether it should not go in more cases to enhance cooperation, because in fact, two cases of great success were the Schengen Treaty and the euro, which is quite a success. I mean, people who agree with euro are more than 70%. So in those cases, not all countries did join. Some did join, but it was a success. Is it necessary to go in this way? I would like not to follow this way, because in other cases of the agreement, it was eventually at Mr. Schäuble to speak about the financing. The only source of European power is not yet decided, and I'm a little bit worried about that, about the way of financing the coming pluriannual financial framework. And Again, congratulations for these 76 sessions yesterday and today in Berlin, so where my father did study in 1923. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel Porto, and it's not finished. I asked you to be present at 1 o'clock as well when we meet Professor Lammert, the former president of the German Bundestag and now the president of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. So, Georg Pfeiffer, I ask you now to ask our young friends who wants to come in.
Yes, so far I have Frank Heuberger who wants to react, and probably afterwards, in order to answer the questions on youth, I don't know whether Ms. Clara Völler would also want to take the floor briefly, but first, Frank Heuberger, please.
Well, unfortunately, this is not. I raised my hand much earlier, so I really want to speak to something different. So therefore, I would really ask my other colleagues to respond first, because I actually wanted to get back to the question of Mr. Pöttering from the very beginning in regard to the democratization and the participation possibilities in the EU. So
please give your answer. You are welcome to do it.
Okay. I just wanted to come up. Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think this was really an appropriate question in the very beginning from you, because when we always speak of participation and democratization, you can mean a lot of things. But I just wanted to give you a very concrete example just from the recent past, namely what the new programs of the multi-financial framework are concerned. You may know that there are a number of new programs, for example, the program Justice, Rights and Values. And this big program, Justice, Rights and Values, now contains the smaller program for the civil society, namely the European Citizens Program. The point was, when this smaller program, which is really important for the organized civil society all over Europe, because it's really a financial resource for a lot of projects all over Europe, it was integrated in this Justice, Rights and Values program, and it was devaluated not only because that it was now put together with this bigger program, but also the enormous amount of money was taken away out of this program. Then there was an outcry from the organized civil society on the Brussels level, and in the very end, again, the money which was taken out in the very end was again substituted to this program. So this situation of going of back and forth of the content of certain programs which are relevant for the civil society, and of course also from the financial resources, this could be very well handled if there would be a mechanism how to involve civil society organizations in the context of programs which are relevant for the sector, for the third sector. But this is not taking place. So this would be a very easy mechanism to harmonize the problem of how to really cut the programs, how to finance the programs, and so on. A very simple and short example. And the other thing, just let me finish, this problem with Article 11 I just mentioned. It is now written law. It is now written in the law, in the Lisbon Treaty, that there should be a permanent process of talking, of a dialogue, of a permanent dialogue with the civil society, but it doesn't take place. Why? So this is really a big thing, and not even the support of the European Social and Economic Committee over the last 10 years was able to really support us on this end. So, and the question is, why is it impossible to do so? Yeah, and that's already why. That's also why we fear that the civil society, like also my younger friends and colleagues mentioned already, that the civil society will not have as much say in this entire conference than we would really think we should have.
Thank you so much for this comment, Frank Heuberger. And now, unfortunately, the time is running out, so I ask Georg Pfeiffer to ask his side or his friends to make very short remarks, because we have to finish, and then I myself have to go to another office in another street where I will meet Professor Lammert, and from there we continue then our meeting. So please, Georg Pfeiffer.
Yes, indeed, we would have two reactions from youth organizations, but please be brief in order that we can finish in time. First Ms. Völler.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to be quick. I just wanted to quickly refer to the first question of the second round, because here the topic of the federal system of the European Union was raised. And here I just wanted to underline that me, as representing the young European federalists, we demand the United States of Europe, so a federal European Union with all its consequences. So, for example, we demand a social pillar, as to create a balance again between the economic integration, and also in the question of foreign affairs, we demand, for example, a foreign affairs minister or an European army, just because we really think, and this is talking politics now, that in a world where China and the US are getting stronger and stronger, and human rights are put more in danger, we need a strong European Union who stands for its values, and who also on the global stage stands up for these very values, and raises a strong voice against human rights violations, for example. And when it comes to the far right, personally, I can say that I know quite a lot of people who just got active because the far right gains floor again. So young people do really recognize this as a danger, to get to them and to their current lifestyle, and this is why they get active afterwards.
Thank you, Ms. Völler, and very briefly, Mr. Schlagetter, also for youth organization. 1 minute.
1 minute, yes. I'll make it very quick just on the 2 points. The one raised on the far right and how young people stand towards the far right, I can say very clearly, and I can speak on behalf of all of the youth organizations in Europe, at least the ones that are organized together in the European Youth Forum, that we clearly stand against the far right, and that we stand for pluralist and democratic and a tolerant European Union. Also speaking from the German history, we all know that this gives us a special responsibility from a youth perspective. This means the ban of youth organizations. It means the youth workers of youth organizations. It means also the killing of them. And that's why we are very aware that we've got a special responsibility, not only standing up against them, but also educating our participants, so the young people that we work with, to be tolerant, to be democratic, to be responsible citizens. Just a very short comment also on the youth poverty question. Obviously, globally speaking, the situation is better than ever before in history, and that is also probably because of your work in the European Parliament, also speaking about Erasmus. But if we talk today's perspective, then we see that relatively speaking, young people are worse off than any other age group in our societies. 1 in every 4 young people in the European Union is at the risk of social exclusion and poverty. With Corona, young people were 4 times more likely to get unemployed. 1 in 3 young people over the European Union is affected by mental health issues, firstly depressions, anxiety, and other issues. So this is a very important point to recognize, and then we see why we need the Conference on the Future of Europe, to come back to the question, because we all know the issues that come with solving those social issues. We know that we've got economic integration, but poor political integration. We know that we've got this fight over different social security systems all over the European Union that make it impossible to have common policies in that field. But let's be very honest, our concurrence is not the concurrence between Germany, Poland, and Romania, maybe, or Estonia, but it's between the European Union, Russia, China, India, Japan, and all those other countries. So that's really, really where we need to get forward, find common social security policies, also work together and see who we are working against in reality, and not fight against each other, but it's really just stupid, to be honest.
Thanks, Mr. Schlagetter. I think with a view to the time, I mean, we need to round up. I would just want to thank everybody for participating, the stakeholders, also the former members, and I leave the honorable task of closing the meeting our President, Dr. Ansgar Pöttering.
I will only make a very few remarks. First, I thank Georg Pfeiffer for bringing these very convincing young people, some are presidents, together. And I think this was very encouraging what you said, because you are full of ideas, and as long as young people are full full of ideas for the development of the European Union, the developing of a free and tolerant society, our democracy, our legal order, then we are on the right track. And I think we should bring all this into this conference on the future of the European Union. And I am very confident after our discussion now that we are on the right track. And I want to thank you for your work you are doing, and I want to encourage to go on and to cooperate with the European House in Berlin, with Georg Pfeiffer and all people of his team. And I thank you so much. And we as former members association will do our best to bring our experience from the past into the present to prepare our common future in a free and democratic European Union that is based on the dignity of each human being and human rights. Thank you so much, and we meet again.